In this mentor leader seminar, seminar 6, this is the section on practice principles and processes. And so we'll be looking at the actual practice of character mentoring and supervision. And as I had mentioned in the very beginning intro comments, and a little bit ago I mentioned again, the material has 3 things that it's presenting and integrating simultaneously. It's the person and character level model, it's a curriculum for training character mentors, and at the same time it's an actual way of practicing it. And so now we're looking more at the curriculum of when you train somebody else. And of course there's implications for how they practice it. But right now we're looking at, in both of these books, how you all can use that material to train somebody else. When you're training somebody else, you're not looking at the whole person and character level model of change. There's a lot that you've been given, especially in these mentor leader seminars, that you will not even talk about when you actually train somebody. The actual training of somebody at character mentor level 1 is very simple. It only takes a few hours. It's all laid out. We'll go over that in a minute. So what I want you to do is sort of a self-check and self-corrective if you are making this too complicated. And so let's go through this material. On page 87 of this first or smaller book, there is a listing of the different things that will happen if you're doing a training day. In other words, not that you're meeting with people over several meetings. That's another good way to do it. But this was originally written for an actual training day. And as with any kind of plan for training, it can be modified to work better with different individuals in different situations. And some things won't be as practical to accomplish. But in this particular one, there's a pre-class where they read the material in the book here on life mentoring. They're to read some of the life and process book. Then they start, then there's an information class where there's actual teaching that happens. They practice a little bit within the class, and then they are on an ongoing basis supervised. Okay, so that's one plan. That's a kind of curriculum for training. That curriculum plan generally has elements that are important for any training, but you might need to adapt it a bit. What I've done in this particular book is I've actually made it even easier for the training day part of it. And so, of course, there's some objectives listed to the training and some rationale for the structured practice. But let's go to page 10 in this larger training and practice resources book. When you are beginning to train someone in life or in character mentoring 1, which is the life mentoring level, this is really all you need to cover. Okay? And so it is really very easy. I have done all the work for you already. All right? And I think this is really where we need to be right now in our part of this particular seminar, is let's make sure we're all on that same, this is really easy page, okay? Here you see a training day layout, but you can adapt this if you do it over several meetings, right? The basic objectives, which is not anything of surprise, but when you actually start to train somebody, they should have a copy of this, right? And then what do? You have to come up with a whole explanation for the character, personal level character model, whatever it's called. What I get all excited and stressed? No, you don't need to stress. You simply read through this with them. All the answers are at the bottom. And as you're reading through it with them, I would recommend they fill in the blanks. And trust me, you all have been with this material long enough. If they have a question, and it's okay to talk about this as you go through it, you'll have more than enough information to help them understand. But basically, you don't have to do anything outside this. Now, this is a kind of programmed learning, and I want to follow the idea that what's important in learning is that we learn the right answer and that we don't learn the wrong answer. One of the problems with the way tests are often set up is that people have to fill in the blanks and things from memory, and they put the wrong answer in. It gets etched in their brain, the wrong way. It's like when I go to a place, and I was driving a car more than I am now, and let's say the first time I go to that place, but I make a wrong turn. I'm apt the second time I go there to make the same wrong turn, right? We don't want that to happen. We want people just to have the right answers. And it's all new to your person you're teaching. I mean, you have so much more information than they do. But all you have to give them is what's here. And that they won't be overwhelmed if you just stay with this. And actually, there are not that many pages. It goes to page 25, Right. And so how is this sounding as being manageable to do? This is what you do to teach somebody before they start practicing. How is this sounding?
Aging by your person.
Exactly.
Now, Dennis, I have a question.
Yeah.
Because Clinton and I had just started helping a young man with coaching me. We'd gone through page 25, and then we didn't know where to start after that, so we started and continued in the same book, but then we skipped the reinforcing the foundation because we just did the foundation. And then we moved over to page 35, the sole person concept of identity.
Okay, let me
Is that
stop
okay?
Let me stop you right there. Only to page 25.
Okay, so we're finished.
You're done. Start supervising. When they find a client, you use the worksheets and you start supervising.
Okay. Well, that's where we're at. Good to
We're-
know.
We have to just begin slowly with people and make sure that we don't overload them with a lot of information and that we give them an exposure to this. They always can go back and refer to it, but we get them doing it as quickly as possible.
Well, that's what he's doing now. He's starting to
Excellent.
mentor somebody, and we're going to start doing it.
That's great. You guys are moving along quickly. How long did it take you to get through the first 25, those 25, 10 to 25, pages 10 to 25?
Yeah.
Good.
Wow.
Excellent. I know I think he's a quick study, but that's great.
Yeah.
So getting a picture of this, I mean, you've been through a lot of material and a lot of practice and a lot of information. And you're at a point now where you're training somebody else. Well, it's kind of like, a person goes through a bachelor's in the U.S. and a master's degree in counseling, and they've taken tests, they maybe some people write a thesis maybe, and then they go to do their practicum, and they sit down with a person, and it's really relatively simple. You've experienced this, right, Clemens? It's really, what do you do with all this knowledge? It's all there, it's available, but it's really relatively simple what you actually do. You're with the person, right? Becky?
Are these supposed to then, after we do this, pages 12 to 25 with them, because when we did the mentoring training with you, we then actually sat down with a partner and kind of had a little practice session with the mentoring sheet. So should we be their practice partner?
Right. Yeah, thanks for bringing that up.
Somebody else?
Yeah, thanks for bringing that up. If you perceive that it'd be helpful, and I think it's really good diagnostic to do with anybody, is just have them go over a sheet, one of the sheets with you, like the first one, the unmanageableness. Just say, let's go through this together. And I'll model it first. I would give them information, and then we go through the questions. And then there is very specific kind of information in here. Let's see which page it is. It's about how to conduct a mentoring session. Format for the life mentoring practice meetings, page 92. So after you've gone through this lecture, fill in the blank, up to page 25, and you know they're going to go out and start practicing. So they have all the worksheets back here, and if they want them individually, hopefully you have a copy of it, or I can get you one. But they'll need to know how to conduct a meeting with somebody, right? And so page 92, for the life mentoring, which is that Character Mentor 1 level, this gives you the format, and just make sure they understand this format. And then, like you're saying, just take one of the sheets and just model part of it for them and have them try it working it with you and see how they do it. Some folks, it will be no problem. They're used to teaching people Bible studies or whatever, but other people might struggle with it. But that'll be a good, a way to see that they're ready to just start meeting. How's that sound? Yeah. But those 2 pages, and they need to know about this too. They can refer back to page 92 and 93 if they kind of forget how to handle the meeting. So you have the lecture, you have how to do the meeting, you have the worksheets. It can be helpful to demonstrate it. Make sure they're ready to go. He's already meeting people, so he's fine, probably. But you can maybe have him talk about, well, how do you conduct your meeting? How's your meeting going? Are you following pretty much what it says here? How's it working for you?
And where did we get the worksheets? Are those in the life? Does everybody have the life in process?
All the worksheets are on the back of this book.
Okay.
They can copy them out of here. There are PDFs of them.
And I'm just wondering, so we can send them.
Yeah, you can send them.
But they need to be.
That's what I would recommend they have the books because it's all there.
I find that, this one is a very important.
Oh, the little one. Yeah.
The life and process.
Oh, the life and process. Well, especially the way you're working with people.
We do the chapter and the worksheet.
It seems that the population of people you're working with worksheets, even though you could do the life coaching level, Character Mentor 2, they really like the worksheet kind of. And you'll find some people who just like worksheets. This is in English, and I sent you all a copy in German, which I totally can't recommend. You have to read and see what you think of it. But you're having to translate into Spanish some of it.
We have them now.
Mm-hmm.
I do have to polish the vocabulary a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
but we have the worksheets in Spanish now. Yes. But not ready yet. We have to review them.
Yeah.
Then I'll send them to you and
That'd be
you
great.
decide what
Yeah.
you like.
My Spanish is not very good, but I'll try to.
Is somebody working on a German translation?
I will probably be translating them in the near future. I don't know how long that's going to take. That might take 2 years. But my plan is to do that.
It would be hard for me to go into German. I'm doing translating into German. It's not
Yeah.
it needs to be German specific.
Yeah, well, you all have contact information of each other, especially emails, and I would encourage you just to keep interacting with one another. And that's part of what I'm asking about what you want to do in the future. Is there's real benefit in the way we can contribute to one another's work. And being a native German speaker, it's going to be easy for you as you have time, to just translate things. Holly and I worked on a translation issue we had early on. It was the sheets were all in the consciously Christian form, right? And this particular person was challenging to work with, and particularly it seemed like those words, God-type language, was getting in the way. So we started doing the not consciously Christian revision. changing that. I think that's worked out better for some folks. Okay, so yeah, so we're just talking about you all only right now doing Character Mentor 1 level training with people. Trust me, it's not a whole lot more complicated to train the content for the folks at the Character Mentor 2 level. Let's look on page 28, is where this is the beginning of the training for the Character Mentor level 2. Now, you're not doing that now, so I'm not wanting to stress you out about it, but if you choose to, with these folks, if they do well and they want to go on to the next one, you can see that from page 30, and this is longer, to page 55. It's the same lecture with fill in the blanks. And that's what you start with, training them, and then they begin to do their supervised practice. Now, there are some other resources, and I just encourage you to get familiar with the resources. You'll find that as you're going through the lecture material, there may be a reference to one of the appendices. For instance, I think even in the first part, the life and mentoring part, there'll be a reference to these diagrams. So the way this works is you'll have the lecture, there'll be some references to some diagrams or something, and then you just reference those. That's truly what this is, training and practice resources, right? And so I think there's maybe a reference to this diagram, the temple diagram. So I would say just get really familiar with this. When it comes to the life coaching or the Character Mentor 2 training, and again, now we're looking at 10 tasks. This is not for what you're doing with these folks now, so don't get stressed about it. But this is the recording sheet. And you use these sheets, right, Jane? And so this is a helpful way for people who are doing the Character Mentor 2 or life coaching level to remember the 10 tasks as they're coaching, but also afterwards when they're done to go back and fill this in. And I give an example of what it would look like filled in for a particular meeting. And so that's a helpful resource. There's things like, just for both, like people collect hours just as a recording form if you don't have some other format for doing it. It's a standard kind of thing. In fact, you do this kind of thing, Clemens, for your Lebensberater recording of hours, and I sign off on them. You know, it's just a common kind of thing to, if you're doing a practicum or a practicum type thing, is to have a way of recording hours. And then I already mentioned, and this is just on page 90. This is a quick reference to the stages of change, the primary life goals, and the 10 tasks. So again, these are resources, just helpful resources, but not to be overwhelming. And here is the listing of the virtues, as true to spirit and character strengthening. And then the whole back part, most all the back part except for the endnotes here, are the 2 sets of worksheets. So this is pretty much the tool that you need, along with them giving reading assignments in here. And if they're a good English reader, they can read the second half of this. This is the stuff for life mentoring. And I think it's good for them to work their way through it. But as far as your face-to-face work with them, again, you go through what's in here from page 12 to 25. You make sure they can do the worksheets and turn them loose. And then schedule regular supervision with them. And they need to collect 50 hours of practice with their clients and 25 hours of supervision with you. And when when it comes time to give a certificate, we can do that jointly. Your name can be on it. And mine can
Yeah, so when they have a pre-reading assignment, which is they should familiarize themselves with life and process.
Actually, now I would say, don't worry about the life and process unless they're really motivated and want to read it.
Okay.
What they need to have to practice with people in these worksheets back here, the points that it starts out with, summary points, are actually summary points from the chapter that corresponds to this. So the summary points from the unmanageableness chapter in here, on worksheet number 1, the unmanageable worksheet, if you were to read the unmanageable chapter in the life and process, those are just the main points.
But so, all right, so they should be, before we start this training with them.
I don't think you have to wait till they get it read.
Okay, so,
Yeah.
all right.
No.
Because the first part of it is actually coaching, right? And the second part is
Yeah,
coaching.
and I put it in that, it's kind of confusing maybe, I put it in that sequence because I wanted people to get a kind of a summary idea of the actual model of health. And this is where the conceptual model versus the curriculum for training kind of confusion can happen. When it comes to training people how to do this, you start with a life mentor. But when you want to convey a kind of a conceptual idea about how the model really is, the life coaching level, the character mentor 2 level, is really the conceptual model, how it plays out in the 10 tasks. And so, yeah, we go back and forth. And right now, with the folks you're working with, you're primarily focused on the curriculum side of it, how to train them to be character mentors. And then that curriculum directs them to how to do the actual practice, which is using the worksheets. Why do we make it so simple with just the worksheets? I mean, I hope it doesn't offend anybody starting at that basic level. But there's some rationales that I have for doing that, and you probably read them already, but there's some amount of complexity to actually sitting down with somebody and helping them intentionally that I don't want people to have to struggle with. What do we talk about? What if they say this? What if they say that? You know, I've never done this before. Some people, we don't know what level of experience people have when they start training with this. So we start with a pretty basic level. And to reduce a lot of stress, but get them in the level of interaction that's a life mentoring level of communication. We have the structured worksheets that give some information, some summary comments. Then the questions are more probing kinds of questions that reaches that level of interaction that you want to have to help people identify what's going on in their lives that they want to work on and what areas of character or strength we need to have. And the quality of the relationship with God.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, we have time for several questions.
On these study guides
Yeah.
you sent us, you ask who are the first sets of worksheets most appropriate for, and who are the second set of worksheets most appropriate. Can you go talk about that a little bit,
Sure.
please?
Let me see what.
It's on the last page.
Yeah. It's really in reference to the consciously Christian and not consciously Christian worksheets. So, who are the consciously Christian worksheets appropriate for?
I thought you meant like, because the sheets are in, you know, it starts like the first 3 or 4 and then another 3. I thought you were talking about those groups of sheets and not 2 different types of sheets.
No, actually, I'm just talking about the whole set of 15 of consciously Christian and the whole set of 15 of non-consciously Christian.
Oh, okay, all right,
Yeah.
that's more clear then.
Right, so, yeah, so page, this will be obvious, but
Yeah, okay.
page 102 to page whatever. Is there? Yeah, it's page 138 are your consciously Christian ones. And, you know, those people, we might think that if somebody says they're a Christian, that they may be really able to relate to these, But it could be that, especially if you're not a very mature Christian, the God language might actually be causing them to think in a way they don't typically think. And so, like this particular client that you were working with, it just changing the words a little bit to make them less specifically God language helped to free the person up to comment on it more. Because she wasn't so much thinking about what Holly wanted as a Christian kind of response, but was able to break out of that and just respond, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I learned very quickly, I think by page 2, 1 and 2, that she was giving me answers she thought that I would want. Instead of what was actually true for her. So then when we opened up the language a little bit, so that she was able to explain her thought process was, and that stopped immediately.
Yeah, so like Holly's saying, it only took 1 or 2 sheets to realize that it wasn't working well. It'll only take 1 or 2 for you to realize if it is working well, that the language is working for them. Is that helpful?
Yeah, I was misunderstanding the question.
Yeah, I probably wasn't worded clearly, but that's what I meant.
But yeah, thank you. That's-
Okay, we still have some time. Other questions, comments about the material, clarifications about how it works?
I was just noticing, in one particular situation, using worksheets in mentoring. Sometimes people come across that they want to teach me, or they feel like they don't really need a teacher, but we're still meeting. So with the worksheets, it seems like it helps us get to the point and kind of gets rid of some of that mask situation after a while. If they continue with the mask and they just kind of give me answers that are like Holly was experiencing, they're supposed to answer, then sometimes I wonder if we need to continue that, we continue mentoring. But I feel like these questions go pretty deep and it helps to get where we need to go. And if people want to be teaching the mentor or want to be over that, or
That's kind of an awkward way to relate.
yeah,
because it's
yeah.
you're defining. The relationship's defined as you being a mentor and then being a client. But then they want to reverse the roles.
Or just kind of a mask is there, they don't want to really get to the point.
Yeah.
These
Well,
questions help them.
that's kind of a general resistance sort of issue, isn't it? They're kind of resisting being in the process.
I guess, or resisting wanting to admit that there's any need there.
Yeah. It's hard to help people who aren't ready.
Right.
Yeah, so again, the simplicity of using worksheets as people are starting out provides for them, both client and for mentor, a structure that's pretty clear. And so they should be, after the first 1 or 2 meetings, there shouldn't need to be much explanation about how our time together is going to go. They should pretty much know the plan. Okay, this is what we do. We go over to the summary points, we start processing questions, and we talk. We end up with some beliefs that people have about God and how He responds to us. So they should be, they should know the plan and the program, and they should just pretty much, be ready to go through it when they come in. So much that's not required, in terms of additional thought on the part of the mentor by using worksheets. In that it is bringing people through an identification of telling their story, and also identification by telling their story of kind of goals, and then it's structuring how to address whatever they've talked about, because so it kind of takes people through the character mentor 10-task process, but in a mass way, in terms that it's in these worksheet form. But it is doing the same kind of thing. It's challenging people to talk about their lives, identify some things, and then do some work on it. But the mentor is not having to experience so much stress about every time coming up with how to do it.
Right.
And they get to experience the feeling of what it is to be with someone in a processing kind of level and be able just to pay attention to what the person is saying, rather than having to keep a lot of other things straight. And so I'm coming at this at a fairly basic level of helper skills by structuring it this way. But if a person does a couple plans using the worksheets like this, they will have a feel, and this is a very experiential kind of word, they will have a feel of what it's like to be working with someone in this kind of way. And that may seem odd, but not everybody as a helper has experienced processing through something with another person. They might have experienced listening to somebody as a friend, or they might have been a good advice giver. I say good because it's not always good to be an advice giver. Or they might have taught somebody else some biblical concepts and things. But have they ever really been in a one-on-one time of processing a topic? And that's what the questions are pushing toward, as you mentioned, that people don't just get answers, but they have to process it a bit in their own lives. Is that making sense about the different qualitative difference there is to different kinds of interactions with people?
Maybe to go a little deeper into the situation, thinking about, like I noticed the person that I'm mentoring, he wasn't opening up, so I began to open up more of myself and getting some of my situation into some of these questions, hoping it to be more personal trust there happening. And after two sessions, it still seems like he's still kind of having the mask and not really giving answers, you know.
Well, yeah, it
So
might
I don't
be.
know where to go from there.
Right, so, and this is, we can only do so much,
Right.
you know, and there's this phrase in English, you can take a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, you know? And it's true for helping people. We can present everything that's needed to begin making progress, but we can't make them actually do it. But what we can do, if we see a repeated pattern of resistance, we can ask ourselves, is this a problem with them not having information about how to do this? So you do a modeling of it. Well, now the person knows what it looks like, right? So that's probably not the problem. It's great that you did that. It's a good way to help them know how it works. It may be time to just talk about it. We've been through several worksheets. I find that it's been difficult for you to respond very deeply to them or very much information. I don't know what that might mean, so I did a modeling of it so you could see what it would be like. And then it seemed that you still were struggling with it. I don't know if the material is not working for you or if there's something else going on, but we need to talk about that. Because this is not going to be as productive as it can be in your life. And then that should give you some information about what to do next. What are the choices?
Either
You keep doing the same thing.
If the person doesn't open up, then the choice is, it looks like I can't help you. You know,
Yeah, that's one choice, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now let's say the person goes, oh, okay, yeah, I know it's hard for me to open up, I'll try harder, but then you've got some inroad, some possibilities. But you know if nothing happens, it's probably going to keep going the same way.
Right.
You know, past behavior is a predictor of future. You know?
Right.
So yeah, something needs to occur, and you tried one kind of intervention, and that was great, you modeled it.
And I guess you can always leave the door open
Yeah.
and say, maybe later,
Yeah.
you want to try this again.
Yeah, I think that's an encouraging thing, you're not just closing them off.
It happened to me with a client that she did the first session and then kept postponing our next meetings, and we worked together. So I felt like she was avoiding talking about it because she felt I don't know, maybe with compromised on how to proceed with that. She came. I just was very patient about it, and she came the other day and she said, I know we have something pending with this study was started. And that's what I said. Left the door open. You know, actually, in Spanish, don't worry. We will address it when you're ready. We'll go on with it. And just keep praying and being, well, in this case, colleagues and friends with her. And it's interesting because it relaxed her to the point that now she's more interactive with me again as colleagues in the workplace. And I feel that, yeah, it's time. You know, she might consider again.
So it leaves the door open. It addresses something that was happening that you knew was happening. She did too, that had begun to make an impact on you being able to relate to her as a colleague. It got awkward, right?
Yes.
And so simply by bringing it up, being gracious, keeping the door open, it lessened the awkwardness, and she was able to be okay. And you know, it is a readiness issue for people. We can think about our own lives. You know, are we different times? Have we been ready to deal with something? You know, or not?
Right.
And so yeah, talking about it maybe more directly now, probably.
Right. I think that's often very good advice.
Thinking about Supervision and wanting to train however many people from the team who would like to get involved in this. They'll mostly be, I anticipate more people being interested in what they would not know is called the non-consciously Christian, but in the non-consciously Christian worksheet. But looking through it, it does talk a lot about higher power and spirituality. So when offering this as a possibility to people who not only who would like to be a client, basically, and say, here's the sort of pool of volunteers who do character mentoring. How can I best describe it, do you feel, or would you recommend? Because it does talk a lot about spirituality, but in a general sense. But just thinking of, I would say most people who come to you should talk a lot about energy. That's sort of the buzzword people use. And there are also people who are pretty staunchly atheist, but would still like to do something like this. So how could I present it to somebody?
Yeah, I think there's another term you could use along with higher power, because that still seems to have some, for some people, I think, an idea that there's an interaction that can happen with that, whatever, maybe not defined as God, but something. For people who don't even seem to connect with that, I mean, I would question if a person doesn't have anything beyond themselves that they aspire to in life, even if it's some kind of value or ultimate, what I would say ultimate meaning. If a person cannot even identify some kind of ultimate meaning in life, something that helps them to move forward in life, it doesn't have to be even the idea of higher power and who we know as God, but is there anything in their life that is outside of them that they would aspire to in some way? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Some ultimate meaning.
Okay. And then to replace
even higher power.
spirituality, there's something in here about what would it be like for you to accept this spiritual truth or something like that? What would be a word that we were I could replace spiritual or spirituality, spiritual experience? Same thing?
Yeah, same kind of
Would it
thing.
be like for you to accept this ultimate meaning?
Yeah, what would help you to move forward and that you can identify as being meaningful about life that would help you to move forward. I'm really concerned about people who don't have anything beyond themselves at all. I mean, they can't even identify anything that helps them to feel like they can transcend themselves. Like some people, it's going out and being in nature. They just feel it's like there's more in the world than just them. That they can motivate or inspire, give them a sense of meaning in life.
Yeah. And what I'm thinking, I do not want to take a worksheet and make it just fit this one this individual here and this individual there. I'm mostly thinking of the broader spectrum. So if I have 5 people who are like the character mentors, how they could best, maybe in my training with them, say, in the first session, that is sort of like the consultation, where you see if this is what works. And it's during then where you can gauge, are they a person who likes this language, like sort of 3-tiered, I guess. Are they Christian language, higher power language, meaning language?
So I would, and I know we need to end here in a minute, let me just mention this. Back to what I was saying in my introductory comments, that there are 4 things that are primary or key to this particular way of helping people. And the first one is, what is the core unifying concept? And so I think it's totally legitimate to start out, as you're doing the training like here, it leads right away to it.
Yeah.
This way of change, this model of helping people, has the view of human beings that we are both material and immaterial. That is not either Christian or not Christian. This is just basic design. And they need to understand every approach to helping people has a definition of the human person. And there is no science, no research that can disprove this particular idea. Because science isn't designed to disprove or prove the immaterial. It's not the ultimate truth. And so if they agree that this is with this core view, that there's a spiritual dimension to people, it's an immaterial dimension, then I think you've got some ground to help train them.
Okay.
And then, yeah, like you're saying, just use different language. But I think if they can identify with themselves, will be encouraged. Are you saying I'm really not my brain? Exactly. This has been a challenge for philosophers through millennia, right? Aren't we more than just a brain in a vat, right?
Yeah.
We're a person beyond that.
And you can gauge that pretty easily in the first consultation. If you say something like, what's it like for you when I say you are not your brain?
Yeah.
And then depending on how they answer, then that would give you some insights to, do they actually see outside of themselves, or?
Yeah. Yeah, to just say, if I were to say to you that you are not just your brain, and there's more to you than just your brain, they might not understand exactly, you get a little bit of teaching about it, but if they can start to grasp the idea that, oh, yeah, well, yeah, I mean, when I think about it, the word I, or how I use whatever reference pronoun was, yeah, I'm referring to something more than just my brain. Okay, thanks. Great questions. Let's take a break. We'll come back to the final part of our time together.